What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Destination the Show. This is episode 102. My name is Jamie Cameron, joined as always by Jeremy Nygaard, Thanksgiving edition. What's going on, man?
Not a whole lot. We're doing this on the Monday night. I don't know. Have we ever done this on a Monday night before?
This definitely feels weird. Although I kind of feel like around big holidays, like I lose all sense of time anyway. And I'm, do you ever have the feeling where you're like, it's a Monday night and you're like, how is it not like Thursday or Wednesday already? That's kind of how I feel at the moment. Maybe it's just a bad day for me.
Yeah, no, never. Sometimes in the summer, I wonder what day it is, but never during the school year. I always have a pretty good sense of the time. It's Monday night, so there's Monday Night Football on. That helps me.
I don't care about football because the Vikings are a worthless franchise, so I'm uninterested. That, and I've never had a fantasy football year so bad. I'm not like a fanatic or anything, much more into fantasy baseball, but I play in 3 leagues of varying degrees of competitiveness. One, a keeper league, more serious, keep 3 guys type of a deal. And the other 2 more casual. I've never had a year where so much went wrong. Injuries, poor performance. Like I've got a lot of Lamar Jackson. I got a lot of Jalen Daniels. I got a lot of guys who are doing a whole lot of nothing and or who are hurt. And that is also dulling my interest in football. So struggling with that, man. Much more interested in the Lynx' number 2 overall pick and who they might go with.
That's happening. And I should just say, too, I'm pretty good at fantasy football this year, so I stay interested.
There's nothing like the sound of your own horn, Jeremy. Congrats. What are you doing over break, man? Are you a stay-at-home type of family? Are you a like we're hosting type of a deal, or what's your general Thanksgiving vibe?
Thanksgiving is we always eat lunch at my parents' house, which is like 4 miles down the road.
Okay.
And then
nice.
we'll head to my wife's parents' house, which is like 25 minutes down the road. So not a lot of travel. We were retail employees in our younger days. So the Black Friday thing was always kind of a fascinating time, but it's changed so much in the last 20 years that it's, shopping's just become an online thing. So sometimes we go out and try to brave the crazies, but it's nothing like it used to be back when we worked it.
Okay. I feel like we've known each other a good amount of time at this juncture, and you've never told me about your retail life. So where exactly did you work and how miserable was it?
Well, the best retail store ever.
Please go on.
Target. It wasn't miserable at all. I enjoyed it. I worked with CDs, RIP, DVDs.
They still exist. They still sell them, but they're very limited stock.
Yeah, no, I walk the aisles occasionally, and it's like there's more dedication to records than there was no records back then, and it was books. I mean, it was music and movies and books and iPods and no iPads yet, but it was fun. That's what we did. So yeah, you stock late, or you get up early and you are ready for the crazies to run through at 4 a.m. or 6 a.m. whenever you opened, and that was the life. That's where I met my wife. As a matter of fact, we worked together.
Wow.
Yep. She's shaking her head at me disapprovingly right now.
This is a story that needs to be further investigated another day, maybe when she's not standing right next to you. Let's jump into baseball things. We'll start with the housekeeping stuff. Ways that you can support the show: you can like and subscribe on your preferred podcast platform of choice. You can find all of our stuff on YouTube. The handle there is @Destination the Show. If you want to send us questions, which thank you so much. I put out like a very last minute call for questions today, and we got some really great ones, most of which we'll try and answer today, some of which we might kick the can down the road next week on. You can find us on Twitter. Handle there is at DTS_pod1. Blue Sky handle is at Destination Show, or send us an email, destinationshow@gmail.com. Jeremy, is kind of like a rounding up the news type of a week. Things are percolating in the off season, and there's kind of several buckets we need to dig into. First and foremost, I think we should start with 40-man additions. The deadline to add players to the 40-man roster to protect them from exposure to the Rule 5 draft passed last week. And this is just good timing because we can review it instead of making predictions and looking silly when we got them wrong. So here's who the Minnesota Twins chose to add to their 40-man roster. Left-handed pitchers Connor Prelip and Kendry Rojas. Right-handed outfielder Gabriel Gonzalez. Hendry Mendez, who was acquired in the Harrison Bader trade with the Philadelphia Phillies. Right-handed pitcher Andrew Morris, who missed a good amount of time but has been consistently good throughout his minor league career. And then right-handed pitcher John Klein, who we'll probably talk a little bit more about. So I guess like starting high level, your reactions to the list, any surprise omissions? Is there anyone who you're kind of expecting they might protect who they ended up not? And thoughts on this group?
CJ Culpepper was a name that I kind of assumed would be added just based on things I had heard over the last couple of years. And I think he's got kind of the repertoire that he could potentially get drafted and stick. Beyond that, not really any names that I thought would or should be added that weren't. Mm-hmm. John Klein, I think, was the surprise name to most people, but we've said on here that he would be added, right? I mean, for me, that was like they always add one guy that kind of flies under the radar. John Klein was that guy. So for me, that was not at all a surprise. I think I probably would have been more surprised if his name wasn't on the list. So thought they would add more. I think the surprise comes in the form of filled up the 40-man when there's just guys on there that don't necessarily need to be on there.
For sure. So let's touch on Culpepper quick, and then we'll pivot to Klein, because John Klein is someone who is like, I feel like the epitome of why we do the show, which is kind of shine a light on folks who are a little bit under attended to. But touching on Culpepper, to your point, I think like if you look at his recent health track record, that kind of explains away a good amount of why he wasn't really considered to be added. He got up to AA back in 2024, pitched 21 innings at that level that season, and then has just missed a ton of time with injuries the past 2 years, and managed 54.1 innings at AA in 2025. So across 2 seasons pitching at AA, he's only managed like 75-ish innings. And that's just, I mean, I feel like if he had remained healthy, he would probably be up in AAA by now, and he would be much more likely to be kind of a shoe-in, no-brainer type. But I do think with Culpepper, it's really more of like a missed time and a health thing. Moving on to Klein, Jeremy, and I want to get your thoughts on where he fits for the Twins in 2026, because I think we're probably fairly aligned there. 23-year-old right-handed pitcher out of Brooklyn Center, Minnesota. 6'5", 225 he's listed at. I'll just give his numbers overall in 2025. So he pitched exclusively at AA and AAA, 106.1 innings in a variety of roles, a 3.98 ERA, a 3.26 FIP. If we look at the strikeout numbers, super healthy, 27.6% strikeout rate, just an 8% walk rate for you. K per 9 and ball on bases per 9, folks. That's 10.83 Ks per 9, 3.13 walks per 9. I mean, I think we touched on it, Jeremy, at the time. This is truly one of the more impressive breakout seasons from any Twins minor leaguer in 2025. What do you make of Klein's performance, and how do you think he's set up to contribute in 2026 with this ad?
So undrafted, currently 23. So I think the thing a lot of times is you would assume that he's just older and that it took him a long time to come through the system,
Right.
and that's not at all the case. I guess I kind of view him in the same realm as like Travis Adams, where I think he could very easily come up, make a spot start, and do fine if you have enough pitching depth where you just want to keep him in the rotation at St. Paul and have him be ready. I think given the context, the makeup of the 40-man roster, payroll restrictions, all of those things, I think it'd be really easy to take him and say, let's see what happens if we unleash you in a relief role. He did that. He pitched in his 31 appearances, 16 of them came in relief.
Mhm.
He's obviously got the ability to stay a starter, but I just, for me, there's something that is intriguing enough if you're going to have other guys backed up and have enough starters where you can just say, let's do it and let's see what he becomes. And does he have the stuff to be a back half of the bullpen kind of guy?
So I'm glad you pivoted that way. I absolutely think that's the direction that we're headed in here personally. And I think the stuff plays a role, right? And there's no reason to rush this decision. And we always talk about how it makes sense to slow play and not commit a guy to a role before it's absolutely necessary. He has the type of frame you would want a starting pitcher to have to hold up to that kind of workload. And it's indicated in how many innings he was able to pitch in 2025. However, to your point about a potential back end role, his velocity ticked up massively last year. He was throwing kind of 92, 94 range with his fastball 2 years ago. Last year, he was sitting 95 and touched 98 with his fastball. It's like a high spin four seamer, so it plays really well, like top rail of the strike zone. Really, really just like a heavy pitch. And so I feel like he's the kind of guy who you might end up being in a best case scenario is he's a high leverage reliever, in my opinion. And, we're in a reality now where the Twins really don't have much of a bullpen. That's absolutely one of the big questions entering 2026. And despite that, the initial ZiPS numbers on the Twins, I think, are going to show that they're not a million miles away from competing in the AL Central because it's the AL Central. So you need some guys like Klein to work out and have a couple of internal options to contribute in the bullpen. And I think he's a really good shot given the stuff, the size. If you have him let it eat for an inning at a time, you could be talking about him flirting with triple digits in 2026.
I think that's very likely. And just to add my 2 cents on this, I don't think they would have added him to the 40-man if they weren't intent on it. And he was one of these guys they had in the system that was pitching every 4 days, 4 innings. So, I mean, if he's not going to be a starter when he comes up, he's at least someone they want to still keep as, can throw 2-3 innings out of the bullpen, kind of eat up, get some of those outs that not everyone wants to get. I think that's very likely. Role for him to have, especially if he's going to start the season in St. Paul. I think that's safe to say. But he's definitely my dark horse candidate for how this roster is constructed right now to make the bullpen for opening day. There obviously could be guys they add in the offseason that when we get to spring training and we really want to dissect into that, different names could be leading candidates, but I think he is the leading candidate for that right now. And he'll definitely be one of the most intriguing names to watch this spring.
Let's go.
Could we see him in a Louis Varland type track?
Yes. I think they fast track him to the bullpen role compared to what they did with Varland. But yeah, I think he's
100%.
definitely the next Louis Varland, homegrown.
So Varland in 2022 started 5 games, threw 126 innings overall, 3 levels, but started 5 games for the Twins. In 2023, made 10 starts, came out of the bullpen 7 times, and then obviously started a little bit in 2024, 7 out of 16 starts, and then in 2025 it was 50, I believe, and my math might be off, 51 bullpen appearances in the regular season,
Yep.
and then 57 bullpen appearances in the World Series. I think is how that.
Yeah, I think that's about what it evened out to. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I love that though. Like in a if we're gonna be bad next year, and that is certainly a possibility, it's storylines like, can John Klein go from undrafted like Iowa like community college guy to major league reliever in 3 years? That is the type of narrative that keeps me really, really interested and gets me more invested and gives me more faith in the Twins' ability to develop guys. And I think they do deserve a decent amount of credit for being able to develop internal bullpen options, whether that's Cole Sands or Griffin Jacks or Louis Varland, pardon me, or whoever the case may be. They do have at least somewhat of a good track record of making guys be able to stick.
And they will still likely add a couple more relievers here this offseason, but they still seem very willing to lean into just develop who we have, the failed starters, and make them, really serviceable relievers, and hopefully someone who's high leverage that's going to stick.
But we haven't seen those starters fail yet, which makes it a interesting bridge to cross, right? Because that's what you typically try it. It doesn't work. Tyler Duffy, Louis Varland, like there's a long track record. Cole Sands, of those types of players, you want to let them fail for the most part, unless you just have zero confidence in them starting. And so I guess I wonder, which ones of those guys are we saying, oh, they're failed starters? Like Festa for me is not necessarily a failed starter.
No way.
No.
But makes sense as a relief.
I think we're seeing some of that already at the end of the year in AAA. Marco Ryan, Corey Lewis are the first two names that come to mind where they failed at AAA and they're already converting them into relievers, even though they were top pitching prospects. As starters in the lower levels, I think they're kind of moving it along there. And that's why, we're not really considering Festa, or at least I'm not, Festa, Matthews, Woods Richardson in this sort of conversation.
I 100% agree with that. I think Festa has so we take away the injury stuff from the end of the season because that obviously clouds everything. But Festa's stuff-wise, Festa's stuff is so much better than Raya and Corey Lewis's stuff that you can't give up on him as an option to be a starter before we've even really seen him deploy a fourth pitch in a starting role. Raya and Lewis have been, I think at best, you could say uneven. And, Raya, you would know better, Theo, but Raya had starts last year at AAA where he was super dominant and starts where he couldn't throw strikes at all. Lewis was just straight up bad, I think it's fair to say, and adjusted to more of a like knuckleball heavy mix in Arsenal. Those guys, I feel like, are 100% agree with you. Like the first two names who you might say, yep, you're up in a relief role in the majors if you're getting there at all.
And that's fine. But here's when we look at a numbers perspective. Assuming that Lopez, Ryan, and Ober are back, which maybe is not fair assumptions at all, but today, right? That means that two of Zebby, which I think is a guarantee, which means one of Taj Bradley, which is probably close to a guarantee, which means that Sim, Mick Abel, which could be a minor league guy, but we're talking Sim, we're talking Festa, two guys that have done it. Like, you're just going to make them AAA starters?
This is why I don't think there's any possibility a starter isn't getting traded this season.
And Sim's definitely not someone who is going to be a AAA starter. I think he is locked in as the number 4 guy right now with how he pitched down the stretch.
So who aren't you starting?
Matthews and Abel, at least on my depth chart now.
You're not starting Zebby Matthews.
No, not right now.
Jeremy, is that right?
Oh, well, I'm not irate. I just think you're wrong.
I mean, if we're just we're operating under the assumption we got Pablo Lopez and Joe Ryan still here.
That's true,
I have it.
100%.
I have it Pablo, Joe Ryan, Ober, Woods Richardson, Taj Bradley. That's how I have it right now.
And I think the reality is there's two other guys
for sure
potentially
yeah.
3 other guys that you just say they got to be starters. And the Twins did this with Bailey Ober, right? Like, there's no way he starts at AAA, and then he does.
Yeah.
But it was because there was older guys, right? The Chris Paddocks of the world that were on the roster. I don't know if that was that.
Tyler Mahle was pitching, and then he got hurt, and that's what forced them to get Ober up. Then he pitched so well in the majors that he just never got sent back down.
And a trade makes perfect sense. But I do think that, you mentioned Marco Rye, great. I would have had him at maybe 11 on the pitching starting pitching depth chart.
He's not even on there for me anymore.
Like Connor Prelip is more than likely going to start, right? But probably isn't a long-term starter. Rojas is further away, but
long term, I think Morris and Rojas stick, at least get more opportunities as starters, whereas Klein and Prelip are more likely to be on the fast track to be in the bullpen long term.
And I think Festa long term is a bullpen guy.
Oh, for sure, especially after getting thoracic outlet syndrome. If you want to keep that career going as long as possible, don't overwork him as a starter.
And he had never had the surgery, though, did he?
No, he got Botox injections, I want to say, in like his neck or shoulder area in his throwing arm.
Well, that's the rib that you remove when you have this. It's this top rib right up here. Did you know that? That's where it is.
He didn't get a rib removed. It was just injections. So
when you say rib, you don't mean rib though, because that's not the name of what that is, right?
Yeah, it's
your clavicle.
Rib. It's behind that. So I went to the chiropractor because I'd had this, this from playing football out at recess, and he's making this adjustment, and he has to dig his hand underneath the collarbone, and then like wrench my arm forward, and I'm like, that's the rib, right? That's out of place. When that becomes problematic for pitchers, and he just looks at me and he's like, yeah, that's exactly what we're doing, but like people don't talk about this because it's dumb to talk about. But yeah, it's you have your top rib is behind your collarbone.
Wow.
All right then.
Learn something new every day. Okay, so Corey did actually ask a question about which starter is the best fit to the bullpen. We've absolutely covered that. Another question here from Keaton that I want to touch on really quickly. How likely is Hendry Mendez to start next year at AAA? So let's quickly recap his 2025 22-year-old left-handed hitting outfielder, quote unquote, / first baseman. Listed at 6'3", 175, 22 years old. Across his time with the Phillies and the Twins in 2025, he played 108 games at AA. Finished out the year with a 299, 399, 439 line, 138 WRC plus 11 home runs, walking 13% of the time and striking out 13% of the time. A lot to like about the stick, I gotta say. Jeremy, what's your take on Mendez and where he starts in 2026? Where are you putting him if you're making the decision?
I think he'll play first base probably 3-4 times a week, and probably outfield a day a week and a DH a day of the week. And
at what level?
AAA, and see if he can hit his way up into the Twins' plans. He's still young enough that he's got plenty of time to develop. But getting a lot of reps as a first baseman to see if that's a possibility, I think makes a ton of sense.
Love it. The one thing I'll add on Mendez that I think is worth monitoring if you're a Mendez believer, which I think he's certainly interesting for how productive he's been at his age. Ground ball rate is a big problem for him. 57.8% ground ball rate with the Twins in AA last year, and it was 52.7% with the Phillies. Both of those are super, super high. He's going to need to bring that down into the 40s if he's going to do well long term. So that'd be the one thing to monitor with him, I think.
So he went to the AFL, and we assume that was to get some reps at first base.
Yes.
And played no first base.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I think he starts the season at AAA, and if things don't go well, I think they're a little more willing to send him back down to AA just to get his swing right if we enter that case scenario. But getting added to the 40-man, it's very rare. Once you get added to be protected from Rule 5 draft, you're sent back down to AA.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about Derek Shelton's staff, which is now fully hired. We'll quickly recap the names, and then if there's anyone of note we want to talk about, we certainly can. We did, pardon me, in our last episode, we did talk about the first two public hires, which I think ended up being the most interesting. That was Grady Sizemore as the first base running / outfield coach, hoping he's focusing on base running a lot, and LaTroy Hawkins and his 24 seasons of Major League experience as a bullpen coach. Twins rounded out their staff with Mark Hallberg as the bench coach, Mark Rabello as the assistant bench coach, Keith Beauregard came over most recently from the Tigers org as the lead hitting coach. Kind of oddly, weirdly, the Twins did retain their 2 assistant hitting coaches, and then Toby Gardenhire getting promoted from AAA to be the MLB field coordinator, with Brian Dinkelman filling the void as the St. Paul Saints manager. Any interesting notes or things you guys want to discuss about Derek Shelton's staff?
The Hallberg thing's interesting because he's a Barron, Wisconsin guy,
Mm-hmm.
so just north. So
River Falls grad, where his coaching career started.
So who didn't have baseball then for a long time. I think just brought it back like in the last couple of years.
It just got brought back last year.
So that to me is pretty cool. I believe he was behind. He's younger than me, so I don't know that we ever crossed paths at UWRF. But
no, because he went there after he retired from playing in the minors. So he was already in his late 20s when he went there to complete his bachelor's degree.
Yeah. So that's cool to me. It's like if you can bring people home, and I do think like when Shelton talked about putting his staff together, like he admitted to working harder on this one than he did in Pittsburgh, which maybe it's accurate, maybe it's not accurate, but I mean not big names that we know a ton about. Obviously, we're familiar with Gardenhire, but you're going to give it a shot and see what happens.
The only thing that matters is that it works. I don't care about this. But thank you guys for finding something interesting to say. I really don't. Who cares? Let's talk about backup catchers because that's much more interesting. The Twins made a trade with Baltimore, sending utility prospect Peyton Eales to the Orioles for new backup catcher Alex Jackson. And we got a question on this. So, Jeremy, I'm going to start with you, specifically addressed to you, actually. Do you or Jeremy have any thoughts on Alex Jackson, says Kyle. I remember some thought the Twins should take him over Nick Gordon at number 5 in – what draft was that? 2014. There we go. Kyle goes on to say, I wanted Aaron Nola. Good scouting, Kyle. That would have been a much better pick. Trey Turner was obviously the big miss. So, Jeremy, do you have any record? This is before my draft time, so I'm out here. Do you have any major recollections of Alex Jackson's draft stock before we talk a little bit about him?
Yes, actually, quite a bit, because that was back in the day before we could just do things where we go live. So we and by we I mean me and the Gleeman and the Geek hosted a draft show from the K-Fan studio.
Stop, that's cool.
So that was, I believe, and Theo can fact check me, the Daz Cameron year when the
no, Daz Cameron was 2015.
Okay, so those are the 2 years we did it. So in 2014, Nola, there was late Nola steam. And actually, people did not want that. Like, the general consensus was, you can't take a college pitcher when you can get these high upside bats.
Kyle did. Kyle was all over it.
I was also that was probably the third year paying attention to the draft as the Twins having a high pick. And obviously 2012 was the first one when they landed Buxton.
You were like 11, Theo.
15. It's 15. But Aaron Nola was the name I just kept looking at because I just at that time was only following MLB Pipeline and their top 50 or 100 draft picks. So I was looking at the top 10, 15 guys, and Aaron Nola was definitely the guy I was hoping they got. And not to say that Nick Gordon was a terrible pick, because Alex Jackson has definitely not had as high upside as Nick Gordon has had in the majors. And
I honestly, I mean, when you look at that draft, Brady Aiken, that didn't go well for the Astros. Right,
top 2 picks.
Tyler Kolek for the Marlins. That didn't go well.
Oof.
Carlos Rodon there was rumors that he was going to fall because of his high bonus demand. So he fell to 3. There was my hope was that he would fall to 5 and the Twins would take him. That didn't work. Kyle Schwarber was someone that people didn't talk a ton about because he was a Big Ten catcher who didn't catch real well. He worked out really, really well. And then that's where the Twins kind of had their pick. The college names, the pitching names that there was a lot of connection to was Kyle Freeland. He hasn't been great. And Max Pentecost was a prep catcher. I think he was a prep catcher, maybe a low college catcher. Anyway,
he was a college catcher.
Trey Turner should have been picked. I was a Tyler Beatty fan. He wasn't great, but I did like Alex Jackson at the time because the reality was, as a catcher, if you were going to take a catcher, you take a prep catcher and hope that it works out, especially when you're drafting that high. They took Nick Gordon. Right now, their career WARs are very similar at negative 0.6 and negative 0.7. Not ideal. And now it's many, many years later, and he is he'll be 30 next month. And so I think it's a pretty low floor, low ceiling addition, low cost. But Parker did tweet some stuff a couple days ago that was at least somewhat promising.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about Jackson's 2025 because it is very distinctly different from all of the other years. So just to give a little context here, he's Alex Jackson, 161 total games in the majors across 6 major league seasons. So absolutely a backup catcher. The Twins are already reportedly going to give Ryan Jeffers more run and more of a 2 out of 3 type of a split as opposed to the pretty much exactly 50-50 split between Jeffers and Vasquez the past couple of years. Now, if we look at F4 for Alex Jackson for the first part of his career, 2019 minus 0.3, 2021 minus 0.5, it's all negative. We get to 2025 with the Orioles, he accumulated 1.1 F4 in just 37 games. So it's worth calling out some numbers there. He hit 220, 290, 473. That's good for a 111 WRC plus. His previous high was 85, and the season before that was just 29. He strikes out an absolute ton, 37% of the time last year, walked 5% of the time, and has a reputation, and the numbers back up that he is a strong defensive catcher, right? So there's obviously some assets here. What I'm wondering about is this uptick in his offensive production in 2025 and how confident we could feel that we're going to get even a little bit of that in 2026 based on a sample of 37 games. So
when you say uptick, I mean, we're talking a guy that got on base 29% of the time last year, right?
Yes. It's more like the uptick in slug, actually, Jeremy, if we be a little more specific here, right? Because the slugging percentage in 2024 was 200. It was 237. And in 2025, it was 473. That's like a 240 point increase. That's huge. His ISO went from 115 to 253. And I think Parker's theory there was he's sitting on fastballs and just kind of letting it eat, I guess would be the expression, right? Where he's upping his hard swing percentage when he's in fastball counts and therefore doing more damage. Anything breaking off speed or down and away, and he's toast.
So what Parker tweeted, to give all credit to Parker,
absolutely.
raised bat speed from 74.4 to 76.1.
Okay.
By comparison, Matt Wallner moves the barrel at 76.6. So we're talking Matt Wallner type bat speed,
which is among the best in the majors, to be clear.
Fast swing rate, 75 mile an hour or higher, went from 47% to 61%, and barrel percentage went from 9% to almost 15%. So And then he responds with made some adjustments, opened his stance 8 degrees to 14 degrees, widened the stance by an inch, attacking out front with pull intent, pulled ball in the air more. Like, so there was obviously some things. Is this like when I read this, is like Cody Clemens had some stuff like this, right? Where
Yeah.
the offensive profile changed and all of a sudden his offensive results changed. Like, is that these are some things that we like and guys that we're trying to add, and we could add this guy for really cheap, and now we've got our backup catcher, and he doesn't cost much?
I mean, I think that's the bet. I think that's the best assumption we can make about the bet that the Twins are making is they're making an assumption that the Orioles, who have good player development, helped him figure some stuff out, made a few tweaks. He is moving the bat faster. That's obviously promising if you want better outcomes. And the Twins would take, take league average WRC plus from a backup catcher position based on one, what they've been getting, and two, what the rest of the league is getting. So he doesn't need to replicate what he did in the 37 game sample in 2025 to be useful for the Twins, especially if he's playing, I don't know what 1/3 of the games equals to. I can't do math. What is that?
40,
50 something,
40 some. Yeah.
So he can show value if he can maintain some of that. I have my doubts and wonderings about how viable that is, but the Twins have their backup catcher.
And if he exceeds all expectations, he's under team control for 2 years after this year, right? First year are eligible, so he'd be an easy guy to get rid of if he's bad. He'd be an easy guy to keep if he's great for cheap. So some cost certainty there as well.
Yep.
I just would not have traded Peyton Neals away for him.
That's the part of the story too, right? But was he ever going to get a chance?
I think with how the roster has really played out for guys like him to get opportunities in the last few years, it definitely would have been possible. I'm not saying there would have been another big trade deadline and he would have got that opportunity afterwards. I feel like if someone was injured at the right time and he was hot at St. Paul and they needed middle infield help, yeah. But they do have a premium on a lot of infielders right now and definitely have a shortstop who is waiting in the wings to get his opportunity and would get more playing time there than Neals anyway. So
for sure,
there's the other side of it. Yeah, it sucks to see someone like him who's such a good story go, but they got their backup catcher now. We'll probably see Eels play for the Orioles sometime next season. So
Eels was, in fairness, though, Eels was not nearly as good in 2025 as he was.
No, and that's because he was playing after being injured for 2 months, and that definitely had an impact on his performance throughout the season, just trying to adjust to how his knee was post-surgery compared to how it was before.
Ronald Acuna seemed to work that out just fine.
I do.
He's Ronald Acuna.
I do want to touch on the value of this trade though. And so something I think that's worth addressing is we often see this kind of faux outrage about a move like this from the social media crowd who are Twins fans, because Eels has kind of cult prospect status, and I think that's fair. He's absolutely earned it. He's been incredible. However, let's just say, for example, Alex Jackson replicated what he did in that 37 game stretch over his full season's worth of contribution. Let's just say he's a 1 WAR backup catcher. You've turned Peyton Eels, who was an undrafted free agent signing, into $8 to $10 million of major league value. And I think it's easy to not look at it like that because we're attached to Peyton Eels, literal small guy, underdog, who is an incredible story, works super hard, and has been super productive. But that's the type of value on the margins that the Twins have to be able to consistently accrue and find as an organization if they're going to be successful. And I think despite our cumulative frustration about how poor the major league product has been the past couple of years, it is unquestionable that the Twins have done a terrific job of finding value in undrafted guys. John Klein, another great example we talked about on this episode. Carson McCusker, even if he doesn't play another major league game, these are guys who have contributed to the organization, whether that is directly or in producing additional value for the team.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I'll stop ranting. Okay, let's move on. Talk a little bit about contracts tendered. Just quick summary here, and then we'll dig in some questions to finish up our time. So the Twins agreed to terms with Justin Topa to deal with like a mutual option that won't happen, and I think a $225,000 buyout for 2027. They did DFA Deshaun Kiersey Jr., tendered contracts to pretty much everyone else, including Bailey Ober, Joe Ryan, Ryan Jeffers, Cole Sands, Royce Lewis, and one Trevor Larnach. Jeremy, do you have any problem with and or surprise grounded in the fact that the Twins tendered a contract to Trevor Larnach? What are your thoughts on this move?
So not a huge amount of surprise from the perspective of it's not a guaranteed contract yet, right? There's some uncertainty about what he's going to cost.
Yeah,
you can at any time up from now until like filing for arbitration, you could DFA him. There is some contractual termination pay language in contracts that he would be able to get some money out of that deal. But what you've seen in times like this, and I don't even have the examples, but I know that it's happened, is when a team settles or when he go through the process and then there's an actual guaranteed dollar amount on the contract, then it's easier to figure out what his value is, right? Did the Twins do this with Gordon? Have they agreed to something with him and then pulled that off? I mean, it's happened before. It obviously, I'm trying to think of a Twins example. And we talked, I said, does he even get a major league deal? Looking at it, yeah, he does, right? So there's some value there. And I think if in the Twins' mind, like we're limited in what we're going to spend, but we could spend what that dollar amount is attached to him, and get decent value, and cut bait if it's awful, and if it gets better, there's trade value there. So there's a glut of players like him.
Mm-hmm.
I think it makes the most sense to explore what they could get for value in return for him. And I think if they truly believe that they couldn't have pulled that off, then they would have let him walk. So I think that's kind of that mode of thinking. Like we'll just kick this can down the road a little bit further and see what happens. Because he's walking back on my statements. He's worth a 40-man spot, so keep him on there.
They have 6 left-handed hitting outfielders, not all corner outfielders on this roster right now. One of them is definitely not going to be there come spring training, and I think he's still the leading candidate for that. And as you were just mentioning, they did tender a contract to Nick Gordon and then trade him to the Steve Noker trade, which we've talked about on a previous episode on how that's kind of, the blueprint of what you might expect for a good return for Larnach, even though it's not what some people might want. It's probably the most realistic approach. So I think that's still likely going to happen between now and by the time pitchers and catchers report down to Fort Myers. So we'll see. I mean, could be fun to explore some trade ideas for finding a team that could actually use a player of his caliber.
There you go. We should do that. Future episode unlocked.
We have to, right? We're doing that, right?
We're gonna announce that at a different time, but yeah, we're gonna.
Well, now you just drew way too much attention. You simply could have said, "Yeah, we got to do that," and we could have moved on.
Well, we're gonna do it either way.
Here's my Trevor Larnach take that you can choose to agree or disagree with. I think that for whatever reason, and I feel like I contribute to this discourse, Trevor Larnach has become the guy who is the person on the current 40-man who is like emblematic of people wanting turnover in the core of hitters. Like people want turnover in the core of hitters that hasn't worked out, and Trevor Larnach is like the focal point of that desire for change. That's my theory on it anyway, because he has not lived up to his potential. He is a bad defender. He doesn't have ancillary tools beyond the bat, and the bat's been disappointing. And so that's just kind of like the perfect marriage of things to be annoyed about. And he keeps coming back every year. And so I guess that's my roundabout way of saying I agree with you, Jeremy. Not necessarily super surprised and don't have a problem with it at this moment. And definitely agree with Theo that there's going to be significant turnover in general on this roster ahead of the 2026 season. And I think I'd still be pretty surprised to see Larnach with the team as we enter spring.
Let me ask you this question one more time, and Theo, jump into if you want. More likely to be on the roster in the spring, Trevor Larnach or Eddie Julian?
Julian, just because
Eddie
he
Julian
cannot really net any return in a trade, and Larnach still can.
Then why tender him a contract anyway if he's not going to be around?
They are more willing to try him out one more time than Miranda, that's for sure.
Right. Okay. We can move on. Just a thought exercise for the both of you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Prof. Okay, we're gonna finish up. We'll finish up with a couple of questions here. Starting to dig into some draft stuff, which is exciting, and or some spring prospect stuff. So here we go. Raphael's up first. Jeremy, I'm gonna pitch this one to you first. He said, with the new rules involving draft compensation, why is there not more talk of Kalen Culpepper or Walker Jenkins making the team out of spring training, especially if we're going to be bad anyways? So quick recap for folks who might be unfamiliar. You can be eligible for a bonus draft pick after the first round called a prospect promotion incentive draft pick if a number of boxes are checked by the prospect in general. They have to be represented on at least 2 of the 3 major prospect lists identified by MLB, which I believe is MLB Pipeline, ESPN, and
Baseball America.
Baseball America. Thank you so much. They have to fill a certain amount of service time. And then a top 3 rookie of the year finish nets you the PPI pick. What do you think, Jeremy, about one, like, what is the likelihood of Culpepper or Jenkins making the team out of spring training? And then 2, do you think the Twins are any more like averse to being aggressive with their prospects than any other org, or is this just about timing and circumstance?
Yes, timing and circumstance. I think the reason this is in is for the guys that are obviously ready to make an opening day roster, who otherwise would be kept down for 2 months to get that extra year of service time, right? That's not the position that Walker Jenkins and Kalen Culpepper are in right now. And I think because they both got time at AAA,
No,
it kind of set. Okay, so I think with Jenkins, it kind of sets off that timeline because you're not going to spend a year plus in AAA. If they keep them in AA and then they promote them both to AAA in the middle of the year, then it's like, okay, they'll be ready the following year. Yep. So because they've been more aggressive in moving guys up, I think it doesn't really set the table for that as much. If Jenkins has another year where he is dinged up, doesn't get a full year in, he plays at AAA all the time, but then kind of lights things on fire in September.
Yeah.
Then this is a conversation we have about him a year from now, right?
Yep.
Walker Jenkins is, if we made an educated list of guys who can win Rookie of the Year next year, Walker Jenkins is probably not real high on that list, and so that PPI thing doesn't even come into consideration, right? In that regards.
And I think I'd add one thing about Culpepper, and again, this just plays into like the timing aspect of it. And this has happened both of Culpepper's professional seasons, even though one was, coming out of college and moving into pro ball. Something I would monitor with Culpepper in 2026 is how does he perform in the second half of the season? So if you look at his numbers, he was absolutely dominant in the first half of the season, absolutely lit it up, in AA. And then he wore down and had an absolutely terrible August, like atrocious, such that I'm pretty confident that Kalen Culpepper would have gone to St. Paul with Walker Jenkins if he had even like a 100 WRC plus type of month in August of 2025, but it was so bad. And then he got hurt, I think hit by a pitch injured for the last week or so of the season, so I missed a little bit of time. But in that alternate reality where he goes up with Walker Jenkins and continues to rake at AAA, he's the one actually who I would give a little bit of a clearer path to entering this spring if he already had, 30 AAA games under his belt and was raking. But just a little bit of a wear down at the end of both of his pro seasons. And I think Dan Hayes wrote a really good piece in The Athletic after visiting Wichita about him. And one of the things that Culpepper talked about was just the need to kind of adjust and get his body ready for like how long the grind of a minor league season is. So something to monitor in 2026. I do want to call out, Jeremy, a question from Max, which I'm going to punt to next week because I'm not prepared for it. But he says, any players coming out of Korea or Japan that would be good fits for the Twins? I got to confess, I'm not like in the weeds enough on this yet. And so if you don't have a good answer, I think we'll save that one for next week.
I don't. There's been a lot of names, including some names of American players that are free agents, including old friend Luan Diaz, right? So that was a market. I do not remember the pitcher's name. It was either last year or the year before. That was kind of washed out in Major League, went over to Asia, had a really, really good season, and the Twins were one of two teams that were very much in competition for services. So I could see something like that happen. But they have gone this route with Nishioka and with Park. So I could see that being a market that they at least look at. But typically you're getting corner guys, and I don't know that there's a huge need for that, and pitchers. So if they could have desire to go with kind of that second tier pitcher, I just don't know that that's really what they need on their roster right now either.
Yep. I think we'll come back to that question. Max, thanks for sending it. I am a little undereducated there to give you a good answer this week, but much appreciated. A couple more questions from Corey. Jeremy, you're going to think I made this up, but he says, is there an update on the 1,000 Tankathon draft simulations? Glad you asked.
There should be.
Glad you asked. Up to 750. I'm going to make my 1,000 before the draft lottery itself, which is, as we all know, on December 9th. And he said, what's the headlines essentially? I mean, the headlines are the same, right? Because we're getting to the point where adding extra simulations is not really helping or changing the odds. We're just getting more accurate. Basically, at a very basic level, what the headlines are is the Twins have a 60% chance at a top 3 pick. That's what we're looking at. And that just feels so low. It's been like 19 point something for first, second, and third pick for a while. And that's making me feel a little antsy. I'm not feeling confident, I got to say. But you've resigned yourself to the fact that the Twins are picking 5th, and anything above that is a bonus. Is that still your position?
Yeah, 4th or 5th.
Okay. That's
what's going to happen. Maybe 6th, and anything more than that is just going to be gravy.
Okay. And then the last question also comes from Corey. He said, can you give us a little mock draft if the Twins were picking 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, or 5th? Who's a player they might target in each position? So we get to call out a few names, Jeremy, and maybe you can weigh in on who your preferred option would be. I think the top of this is pretty straightforward. And I do have my own draft rankings this year in addition to the consensus board because I'm doing the most.
Let's go. Have you started already?
Oh yeah, of course. I have about 30 write-ups done already because they're going in one of those baseball magazines you can buy at Barnes and Noble in the spring.
That's the truth. And I'm going to be your agent for all writing opportunities. People need to contact me. The problem is I don't respond to text nearly as quick as you do.
This is true.
So maybe they should just skip me and go to you. I'm not a great agent. Anyway, if I have the first pick, I'm taking Rock Chalowski.
Absolutely.
And that seems like a pretty easy one.
Rock Chalowski, definitely consensus one for sure.
And then I think after that, I probably at this stage of the game take Lombard or Emerson at 2-3.
Yeah,
I like prep hitters.
You like prep hitters. You also lean upside, and I think that's our general our general kind of leaning. I will say Emerson is like the consensus number 2 guy at the moment, and I think that's decently comfortable. Jacob Lombard has a really wide range of rankings very early in the cycle, and a lot of questions about the hit tool viability. However, that's like super duper star upside with like, 30 pumps and a 70 grade run tool type of tools, which is like so loud. So you're taking a swing, you might get a miss. Emerson, I think, is a higher floor prospect, but Lombard is potentially more explosive and more of a superstar if he hits. I don't have Lombard in my top 5. I do have Emerson at number 2, but absolutely Lombard is like part of that conversation. I think if we move outside of that, in my opinion, to round out the top 5, we're looking at all college guys. If we take Emerson and Lombard out of the conversation, there's another prep player in the conversation who I like quite a bit less than a lot of outlets, named Tyler Spangler, who's a kind of wiry shortstop type kid out of California. You're looking at like really good college bats here in the 3 through 5 range, and we'll throw a couple of arms in there too. So you got Drew Burris, who's kind of undersized college outfielder out of Georgia Tech, just incredibly productive. You've got probably my favorite outfield prospect in the class is AJ Gracia, power hitting left-hander, transfer from Duke to Virginia this offseason. Let's see who else. You've got infielders here too. You could take Justin LeBron, Alabama shortstop. Some questions there, I think, about the hit tool too, or Tyler Bell, who's just a really good all-rounder out of Kentucky. I'll mention one more college bat who might be my favorite. He's a little lower on the board at the moment. His name's Sawyer Strasnider, outfielder out of TCU, draft eligible sophomore. Just checks all the boxes. Then I think in that top 5 picks, you're probably looking at Liam Peterson and Cam Fluke also being part of that conversation, the 2 college aces out of Florida and Coastal Carolina, respectively. So, honestly, and of course, we want the top pick. We want a top 3 pick, but if you're picking in the top 5, you're going to have access to a really, really good prospect in this draft. So that's what I got. Jeremy, if you're picking a little lower, say you're picking 4 or 5, any preferences or names that like are really popping for you at this present moment, with the caveat that we're really far out?
So Burgess was one of them. Burris, and Fluke would have been the pitcher that I threw out there. But I mean, it's like I said, and like I say, we're so far away. We got a lot of other things to worry about first.
That we do, my friend. Okay, that will do us for today, coming up on the hour mark. So thank you guys for adding and sending in the questions. Hope you guys have a safe and restful holiday. Enjoy some time off of work if you are lucky enough to get it. Thank you guys so much for checking out the show and your support. As always, we appreciate it. We will be back in a week or so with another episode. Until then, take it easy.